Okay, time for a new video, and whether you are somebody new to my channel or you are returning to my channel to watch this video, it is greatly appreciated. As always, I'm filming this video in one go, so if I stumble over my words moving forwards, apologies about that, and also if the quality of this video is fairly poor as well, if there's any lag, anything like that at all, sadly it cannot be helped, and hopefully it is not too much of an issue for you. This is yet another Eurovision related video here on my channel, and today I am going through the answers to the questions that I asked you in my most recent upload. And the reasons I filmed that video, really, was because moving forwards I'd like this to be a bit more of a collaborative channel, where we can ask questions to each other backwards and forwards, and we can get a healthy debate going in the comments section, that sort of thing. And I have to say I'm very overwhelmed with the response to that video, which I only uploaded a few days ago. I've had 62 comments, which is a lot more than usual for this very small channel. So I'm very, very grateful to everybody who left a comment. I will be going through those answers in this video. Many, many thanks. I think there's been an issue with YouTube recently where not everybody's full comments are appearing. I don't know what that's all about. Certainly, I think there's a few comments here that I'm looking at where not all of the answers are visible. Why that is, I don't know. Certainly, I haven't deleted any comments here. So I'm just going to go through what I can actually see on my screen. And at the end of this video, I'll be briefly going through my answers to my own questions too, so stick around for that if you're interested. As always, there are links in the description to my other social media pages. Check them out if you so wish. So, the first comment I can see is by Cat Wellham, and I know that some people haven't answered all of the questions, which is fine, but the first question was, if Eurovision was in your country, where should it be staged and why? And you have said, as you're from the UK, it's a moot point. London would have been ideal, as you live there. Fair enough. Plenty of large venues in London, Wembley Arena, the O2, but Eurovision's been held in London many times before, so I can absolutely understand why it wasn't London 2023. If Sweden, the favourite to win, won, how would you feel about it? You've said meh. You'd prefer Spain out of the frontrunners because you probably like it better and they're overdue a win. Absolutely. In another recent video I did, the Five Nation Army video, I did mention Spain as a potential winner. Yes, a lot of things have to go Blanca Paloma's way. Sweden and Finland will have to not suck all of the points, and Spain will have to get a lot of 12s, a lot of 10s, not just from the public but the juries too. It is entirely possible Spain could win. They are one of the favourites, so you just never know. And certainly she's a great live singer, and the performance is going to be excellent, I've no doubt about it. It's just she's up against strong opposition. So we'll wait and see. You don't hate any of the frontrunners, but I think the interesting songs are the ones that are likely to be the middle rankers, borderline qualifiers, and non-qualifiers. Then you mentioned some of your favourites. I'm glad you like Australia, and you'd also like to see Germany have a renaissance too. Lord of the Lost recently met King Charles. There's a combo I never saw happening, but there we are. Anyway, something you don't like about the contest, the worst part about it. You've said you don't like the rigging that can go on, and sometimes national finals don't send the best song. Poland's was a bit WTF. Yes, indeed. I do question the validity of some of the jury members in national finals, and indeed at Eurovision itself. So something I would potentially change if I was in charge would be the makeup of international juries, and I'd also make sure that they absolutely are music professionals. Every year you see it. It will happen again this year. One jury member will rank the songs upside down. Unbelievable that even happens in the first place. You'll also get some jury member somewhere posting their marks online before the actual live show. Things like that. That's got to be eradicated completely. And in terms of rigging, Poland's national final definitely was on the dodgy side, but nothing ever really seems to be done about this. And of course, it's down to the national broadcaster to do something about it. And if they are the ones behind the so-called rigging, nothing will be done, which is very frustrating. Anyway, the next question. Thoughts on other content creators? You think there's a nice variety of people with different approaches. That said, you've taken issue with 3 commentators. You go into the reasons as to why. You've also said you expect not everyone will agree with you, or anyone really, but be reasonable and respectful, and at least respect what a song is trying for. Absolutely. I think what is wonderful about the Eurovision community is that so many new channels are coming along, and I've discovered at least 10 within the past month. Really small channels, even much smaller than mine, but they're fantastic. And it's always interesting to hear what people have got to say about the contest, and particularly people's rankings and voting simulators. I've been watching a lot of those lately. All fantastic stuff. And it's only going to grow more and more. Then, thoughts on the fandom in general. I don't like the word fandom, but let's go with it. You think, as with any fandom, it's mixed. You don't find it as bad as some you've experienced. It helps, I guess, that people aren't going to lose rights or get triggered in any real sense if a song they don't like wins. As with any fandom, some people are going to be arrogant, think them and their mates are representative samples, and have a massive sense of entitlement. I think a lot of people are very patriotic. So when you dare criticise a country's entry, even if you're being completely fair about it, some individuals might see it as an attack on their nation, which is of course an absolute load of tosh. But you see it all the time, especially on bigger channels and bigger Twitter accounts and things like that. Petty arguments will surface, and it's just ludicrous, and it's getting worse. I do think the Eurovision community can be extremely toxic, and I think sometimes that I'm fairly blunt with my opinions. Honest, but admittedly a little blunt. But that's nothing in comparison to what I see some people do. I watched a video very recently, somebody's top 37 of the year, and they had their opinions of each song on screen. And I'm not going to lie, they were exceptionally rude about some of the artists and some of the songs. And my thinking is, if the artist or artists saw those comments about themselves and their song, they would feel pretty cruddy about it. So I've always got that in the back of my mind, even though this is a very small channel. If one of the artists saw my video and I said, oh yeah, your song's an absolute pile of crap, screw you, I mean, that would be terrible. I'd not necessarily know that they'd seen my video, but just the thought of an artist seeing that and feeling bad about it is enough for me to always take a little bit of a step back before I film a video and think very carefully about what I'm going to say. But you've got to be honest, absolutely, so why beat around the bush? Certainly on Twitter, I think the community can be, for want of a better word, extremely toxic. So I try and gloss over it as much as possible. Do you prefer internal or national finals? You've said it depends on the country, but I think the UK were right to go internal. I agree with you. Never trust British people with a vote. Your biggest grower of the year, Burning Daylight, the Dutch entry, fantastic. One of my favourite songs of the year. Favourite national final, you've said probably MGP in Norway. That's a good show. Although maybe there doesn't need to be as many shows in MGP. In terms of overrated and underrated, you say they're useful, but as personal opinions only. I've seen overrated used as shorthand, for I don't agree with the juries. Yeah, exactly. I'm always wary of using those terms. I know I say underrated gems a lot, and I'll be doing a video about underrated gems, great national final songs of 2023 very soon. I think people use those words because they're very throwaway terms. There's no better word to use. Something's overrated or underrated. But as I said previously, you like what you like and don't like what you don't like. There's no such thing as a guilty pleasure. Unless we're talking about Croatia's entry last year. There's no such thing as a guilty pleasure. You just like what you like. And that goes for anything, whether it's Eurovision related or not. So if something's overrated or underrated, is it really overrated if a lot of people really love it? I don't think so. Is a song underrated if you like it but not many other people do? I don't know. Anyway, first memory of Eurovision. You say that you were exposed to ESC songs on the radio growing up, mainly British ones, but Israel's first winner was there, and Ding a Dong, so that would have been the mid to late 1970s. Fantastic. A lot of people are exposed to Eurovision through TV and the internet, but you've mentioned how you sort of discovered it through the radio. Fantastic. In terms of opinions towards Eurovision in your country, being from the UK, you've said the press has got better recently, but it does still have this silly camp reputation, you think. Yeah, absolutely. I think the attitude here in the UK is definitely a hell of a lot more positive than it was about 10 years ago. Sam Ryder definitely improved the attitude in this country. The press still sometimes inaccurate, but maybe not quite as offensive or xenophobic as they used to be. But if we don't get a good result this year, I definitely think we are going to go back to square one a little bit in terms of the general attitude and feeling towards Eurovision in general. The last question that you've answered here, Do you have a soft spot for any nations? You say Italy, Norway, most years you like their entries. Recently, Portugal too. Generally speaking, if a country has had a long streak of bad results, I want to see them do better. So, I mean, for example, you could say Georgia and Latvia this year then. So there we are. Fantastic. Thank you for your answer. Next we have Ryan Atherton, whose answers are all over the place here. But let's go through them. Thank you very much for answering my questions. You're from the UK too. You say it should be staged in Manchester. And I have to say, if I was in charge, it would probably be between Manchester and Glasgow for me. Manchester because it's in the north, a very big city, and well known. Great music scene as well, Oasis for example. So maybe at some point Eurovision will be in Manchester. And they've got the biggest arena in the UK already, and they're building another arena right next to Manchester City's football ground, which I think is going to overtake the other arena in Manchester as the biggest indoor arena in the UK. So 2 huge Eurovision potential venues in Manchester within the next couple of years. So it's looking pretty good in the future. You'd be fine with Sweden winning, but not hugely pleased as it's very predictable. Yes, I think Sweden winning this year would be very predictable. And you'd get a lot of people saying, well, we all saw it coming. The weakest part of Eurovision for you is the allocation draw, because even though this year's was good, usually it takes too long and there's way too many unnecessary parts. Fair enough. As with any draw, World Cup draw, Champions League draw, Eurovision allocation draw, it can be a really drawn-out process. I agree. Other content creators, you think there's some great channels that don't get appreciated enough. You mentioned me, I'm very grateful. You mentioned ESC Tom, he's great. Alicia Michelle, yeah, she's pretty good. She's been doing it a long time. And then there's big group channels, such as Blogs, that get the spotlight, that don't give enough opinions. Then there's been a response to that comment, where JTB mentions Eurovision histories. And I've watched a couple of his videos recently. They're pretty good, absolutely. Blogs, I think they're popular because they've been doing it the longest. I don't always agree with their opinions, but you don't expect to agree with any Eurovision content creator all the time. Something I've noticed with them, this is not a criticism, but I think they're actually a lot slower than they have been in the past when it comes to reacting to songs. Maybe that's because they've all got full-time jobs and they just can't do the videos as frequently as they used to. I don't know. I usually only watch Blogs in May when they're making predictions and going through the rehearsals and that sort of thing. And indeed if they interview artists that I'm really interested in. The Eurovision fandom, filled with many opinions, many I disagree with, and some people are quite toxic and annoying, especially if their favourite countries don't do as well as they would like. Absolutely, you've nailed it there. Something you'd change, bring back juries in the semi-finals, I agree. No consistency there at the moment. You prefer national finals because they're more exciting, and giving the people a say in their entry is much more legitimate than an internal selection. Yes, I think so. But at the same time, maybe this is just me, I never trust anybody to make the right choice. Your biggest grower, Belgium. I think that's the case for a lot of people. He's a great singer. Biggest faller is Australia. Fair enough. Cult classic in your nation. You've mentioned our 1996 entry, Ooh Ah Just a Little Bit, by Gina G, who is Australian. Great song. Last British UK entry to go to #1. She was second in the running order, if I remember correctly, and she finished, I think it was about 8th, which was very disappointing because we were one of the favourites to win, I believe. But it's an absolute classic. That's a good choice. A national final you'd attend, Melfest, as it's the biggest. Fair enough. Overrated, underrated. I think they should be used as much as they are. I use them a lot, and it would be quite hypocritical if I said they shouldn't be used when I use them. Fair enough. First memory of Eurovision, 2015, you say. The Vienna contest. You watched it with your family. Fair enough. Eurovision 2015 hasn't aged terribly well for me, I'll be honest. But there's still a few songs, Estonia, Norway, that sort of thing. Italy as well. I really like some songs from that year, but generally it's not a contest I go back to too often. The attitude towards Eurovision in the UK is currently improving after Sam Ryder. Yes, it is, absolutely. The interest in the BBC, and indeed some other stations as well, to be honest, much higher than it's been for a very long time, maybe ever. Your soft spot nation, San Marino, because they always try their best and send interesting entries. That's a good pick. San Marino do put more effort in than some other countries, there's no doubt about that. A junior Eurovision act you'd like to see at the grown-up contest. You've mentioned former Polish winner Vicky Gabor. and I think she'd be a pretty good choice for Poland as well. Give it a year or two, you never know. So thank you, Ryan Atherton. Next is Paula Rosa. Apologies for my pronunciation here. You're from Portugal. Fantastic. If Eurovision was in your country, you say it should be in Porto. It's a beautiful city to visit. Great places to hold Eurovision. Good wine, great food. And last time it was in Lisbon anyway. Yes, indeed. I think the mayor of Porto ruled out his city from bidding to host in 2018 for whatever reason, which is interesting. You'd be disappointed if Sweden won, but you wouldn't mind at the same time. She's very talented. The song is okay, but there are better songs for my taste. Fair enough. The worst part about the contest, countries that vote for each other every single year, by which I assume you mean, you know, Greece and Cyprus, that sort of thing. Yes, that can be irritating, but I don't think it's ever going to change. People should be able to express their opinions. This is about content creators. You have lots of fun watching videos of people reacting to the songs. The internet made it possible and brought us all closer. What I dislike in some comments of some of these persons is that they can sound offensive. Some people are just rude. Exactly. I always try not to be. I really do. Thoughts on the fandom in general. I think most of the fandom has a really terrible taste for music and is too limited to accept what's different or creative. I also don't understand why most seem to dislike ballads. That's weird for me, but I'm Portuguese. We've 50 shades of ballads here. Yeah, there is an aversion to ballads by some people in the community. And I think that's because people want fun all the time. And at Eurovision, you're just not going to get that. You will get serious ballads. You'll get some serious up-tempo songs as well. So I don't know what that's all about. In terms of taste, I've already said my thoughts on that term already and in previous videos. People like what they like, don't like what they don't like. It is what it is. It is what it is. And sometimes you have to wonder how much of a Eurovision fan they really are. Are they just somebody who's chipping in for the hell of it, or are they somebody who really knows their stuff? Because sometimes you do get complete strangers wading into conversations. You know, they're the sorts of people who are like, I thought we left the European Union so we could leave Eurovision. You know, comments like that, which I saw something like that the other day, actually. Just ridiculous. Things like that. People wading in and just spouting opinions without having paid the slightest bit of attention to the song or whatever. Yeah, I'm going off on a tangent now, but you know what I mean. That's irritating. National finals, you prefer them. The grower thing doesn't work for you. If you like a song, you like it since the beginning. Fair enough. Cult classic. You say E Depois do Adeus by Paulo de Carvalho in 1974. It was the secret signal to launch the Carnation Revolution on April the 24th, 1974. That was the Brighton competition. It started a revolution to end a dictatorship. How cool is that? It still plays everywhere, every year, on April the 24th, and that's coming up in a few weeks. So I imagine people in Portugal will be listening to that song again. Fantastic. It's not a bad song as well. Underrated, overrated. Some such terms make no sense for you. But you understand people using them, though. Your first memory of Eurovision, 1974. You were 4 years of age. You had relatives at home for dinner. Everybody was enjoying it. Fantastic. Checking out a bit of ABBA, as well as Paulo de Carvalho. Fantastic. Attitude on Eurovision in Portugal. It's become more popular recently. For a long time, Eurovision was only a show for older people. People used to say it was a showcase for terrible music. The best musicians don't feel attracted to Eurovision. It's as if they feel ashamed to take part in it. I think, really, that's been the attitude in the UK. And to be honest, it might still be that way a little bit. Big artists don't want to be associated with Eurovision because they could see it as a career deal breaker, for whatever reason. But I'm glad to hear the attitude in Portugal is a little better than it used to be. Salvador's win must have changed things. And your soft spot country is Italy, because you love the language and expressiveness. Fantastic. Let's move on. Thank you for your answer. Denis Sirvali is next. Apologies for the pronunciation. Eurovision in your country. Well, you've said Munich, because you find the city very international and it would attract tourists. It's been in Munich before, has it not? Has it not? 1983, I think it was. Could go back there, you never know. Plenty of venues in Germany suitable for Eurovision. If Sweden won, you would be indifferent. Fair enough. Worst part of the contest, and I have to agree with you here, you're not a big fan of interval acts. I agree, they can drag on. Thoughts on content creators. Sometimes you feel the reactions of many YouTubers are a bit fake. I agree. Thoughts on the fandom in general. It's a bit toxic. I agree. You would reintroduce all live vocals, including backing vocals. That's one thing you would change. I agree. I agree. We don't want Eurovision to become more of a karaoke situation. I've seen people compare it to that in the past. Yes, I mean, Eurovision is a song contest, but also at the same time, you've got to sing it. So, I'd like to hear you sing it live, you know? It goes without saying. You prefer national finals, fair enough. Your biggest grower is Germany, fair enough. Cult classic, you've gone with Genghis Khan for Germany, way back in the day. What a classic. Genghis Khan. Oh yeah, you can get swept up in that one. What a classic. Arguably should have pushed harder for the win. Your first memory of Eurovision, Sertab winning for Turkey, so that would have been 20 years ago this year. I've missed one out here. National final. You would go to Sanremo in Italy, which is strictly speaking not a national final, but let's call it one anyway because it may as well be. In Germany, the attitude towards Eurovision is neutral, and your soft spot nation, it's another one for Italy. Yes, indeed. Let's move on. Yavuzal P. Korkmaz is next. You're from Turkey. Fantastic. If Eurovision was in your country, you'd like it to take place somewhere other than Istanbul, but also a fairly big city. You mentioned Izmir, for example. Who knows if Turkey ever come back and win? It could be there. You'd feel disappointed if Sweden won. I don't want to see a billion acts produced in Sweden and performed by mediocre artists next year. I'm saying this even though Tattoo is in my personal top 3 this year. Yeah, you know, you can have a song that's very high up in your personal ranking, but you don't want it to win. That's an interesting thing, isn't it? You don't like the TikTok cooperation and the whole thing about rehearsal content. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think they did it because TikTok is more popular than ever, and it's becoming more popular with youngsters who have short attention spans year after year. I have to say, I think it's happening again this year. In fact, I think first rehearsals aren't being seen by anybody. They are totally behind closed doors, more so than in the past, because it sort of allows the artist just to focus on their own thing without criticism coming their way and press opinions and everything. So I do think it's changing ever so slightly this year and into the future. Don't quote me on that, but it is what it is. I think the TikTok thing is staying. You like the content creators as they are. You don't really hang out on Twitter or such sites, so you can't really comment on the fandom in general, fair enough. You would bring back the language rule, or at least most of the lyrics should be in a national language. Fair enough. I think it would be nice to have some countries send a song again in their own language, like Sweden, like Malta, like Ireland, for example. You prefer national finals, you watch and enjoy all of them. The only regrettable part about national finals is connecting to a song and then losing the opportunity to witness its whole adventure in Eurovision. Fair enough. Your biggest grower is Belgium, your biggest faller is Estonia. Cult classic, Gözlerinin Hapsindeyim by Kayahan, 1990. Do I remember that song? Vaguely. I'll have to check it out again, but that's a classic. You also mentioned Dum Tek Tek by Hadisa, the 2009 entry. Your favourite national final, or rather one that you would attend, Sanremo, because it's just classy with the orchestra and atmosphere, and also Benidorm Fest if they keep the level very high moving forwards. Overrated, underrated, you don't see any inconvenience in using them. It helps people conveying their thoughts. For example, underrated in my opinion doesn't mean I like this song, so why does not everybody like it? It's rather sometimes a song can really remain in the background for various reasons when it doesn't deserve to be. Fair enough. Your first memory, 2003, when Turkey won. Your dad carried you on his shoulders. Those were the good times. I bet. As for the attitude towards Eurovision in Turkey, withdrawing or a possible return is still a much discussed topic. The attitude varies depending on people's general life opinion. For example, a religious person, and the government in this case, would likely say the show is just an LGBTQ+ party and doesn't align with Turkish customs. A more secular person would likely support a comeback. Many journalists are regularly expressing their requests for a comeback. There are also many famous artists who have expressed their interest in participating in case of a return. Funnily enough, the day after this year's grand final, on the 14th of May, there's an election in here to not decide only the government, but also decide if there'll be a return next year or not. Yes, I think I mentioned this briefly in a previous video. If it's the other chap, can't remember his name, but if he wins, hasn't he said Eurovision is something Turkey would come back to? So I'm rooting for that guy. We'll see what happens. So do keep me updated. If you're watching this video, do keep me updated with the opinion in Turkey. Soft spot, you've gone with Portugal, because they've been doing their own thing for decades now. And Junior Eurovision act at the ESC, you only watched it last year, but you would go with the Dutch kid Luna. She opened the show, she was fantastic, she'd be great, absolutely. The pink jacket, yes. Thank you for your answers. JTB is next. Got to get through these because they're very long, and I don't want this video to be extremely lengthy. But I'll say it again, many thanks for your responses. JTB, you're from the Netherlands. Rotterdam, Amsterdam or Utrecht, the best locations. There is room. Fantastic. I'd like it to be in Amsterdam if it was in the Netherlands again soon. If Sweden wins, you wouldn't mind. Like me, you hope it's not a one-sided victory. Absolutely, it should be close. Cha-cha-cha should be there all the way. The weakest part, the voting system can be rigged. I think I have to agree with you there. More and more content creators. You love that it's become more global. There are a couple of good ones. Completely agree. Completely agree. Some very, very small channels with great, well thought out opinions as well. The fandom in general, you're getting older, and people forget why Eurovision actually started. I hate that some reactors only want an up-tempo song and get sour when it's a ballad. The fandom can be really toxic. Other people have echoed your very thoughts, and I agree with you. You would change Eurovision from May to December. It would be great to have it just before Christmas. Yes, I agree. Stick a Christmas tree on stage, get that tinsel, celebrate, you know what I'm saying? Whack on the Mariah Carey. But Junior Eurovision is just before Christmas, so it would really clash. For your country, an internal selection has raised the quality, which led to Duncan Lawrence winning. You would like a change. An internal jury to select 8 songs and 1 national selection round. Well, there's been a lot of talk, I believe, in the Netherlands about potentially having a national final in the future, so we'll wait and see what happens next. Your biggest grower is Armenia, as it has been for me a little bit. The UK has dropped. The live version is not okay, but she was ill. She was, but she performed in Poland last night, and I've heard good things. You don't know of a cult classic in your country. You would attend a national selection in your own country. Overrated, underrated is too subjective, fair enough. Your first memory is 1984 and Herres winning for Sweden. You had a crush on the men. Oh yeah. The attitude in the Netherlands is negative towards Eurovision. Why is that? Why is that? Because the country's entries, the Dutch entries over the past few years, they've been good. So I don't know what all the talk is about. No soft spots, fair enough. You don't follow Junior Eurovision, but you'd like to see Destiny from Malta get a second chance, because there was some controversy about what happened last time out. Fair enough, she's a brilliant singer. Maybe she'll come back as a songwriter. Next, Styro. You're from the UK. The obvious answer for you is Glasgow. That's where it should be staged. Beautiful city, great arena, fair enough. It very nearly was Glasgow, of course, for 2023. Sweden's your third favourite this year. You wouldn't be disappointed because they're one of the best hosting countries. That they are. They are just pros at this. You don't like the 3-minute song duration. Many songs cannot develop properly within this limit. That's especially true for some slower genres, so you'd extend it to 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Fair enough. You only watch content creators if they're respectful towards everyone and they actually care about the contest. The fact you're commenting on one of my videos, I assume means that you think I actually care about the contest and am respectful towards everybody, so I'm very, very grateful. You have isolated yourself from the toxic part of the fandom. That's the best way to do it. Steer well clear. One thing You'd change the 3-minute song duration. You have no preference on internal or national finals. Your biggest grower is Israel. Your biggest faller is Cyprus. Yeah. Cyprus, for me, I still need to warm up to that one. A national final you'd go to, UMK. It's well organised, not too long, not too short. Quality songs, yes. I made a video all about this about a month or two ago. Quality over quantity, absolutely. Overrated, underrated, those terms are definitely overused. Some people don't realise they are biased towards some entries. First clear memory of Eurovision, Finland winning in 2006. What a moment, especially if you are Finnish. You don't really follow the general public's sentiment on the ESC. You don't have a soft spot for countries, but certainly for some artists, example, Monica Liu. And you don't follow Junior Eurovision, which is fair enough. Thank you for your answers. Dean Barney. Now, I can only see your answers for question 6 onwards, so I don't know where the other half has gone. I didn't delete it. Anyway, one thing you change. You would remove the green room from the floor of the arena so more fans can attend. Yes, I think I'd probably do that as well. Internal selections produce better songs, but as a hardcore Euro fan, you love the national final season. That's absolutely fair enough, and I have to agree with you. I do think the songs I generally prefer, if you take a look at my favourites over the past decade or so, they usually come from internal selections. Your biggest grower is Azerbaijan. You're going off Cyprus, another one for Cyprus. Cult classic, ooh, are just a little bit, fair enough. You would attend Benidorm Fest because they desperately want to win and have gone big with good musical diversity. And also, it's warmer than UMK. I suppose it is. Underrated and overrated are valid terms, but rated by who? First memory of Eurovision, Katrina, winning in 1997. I was too young to remember that, but I'm sure it was a fantastic moment. Attitude in Eurovision, towards Eurovision in your country, amazing, positive since Sam Ryder. Soft spot for Serbia, and you would have Sarah James going from Junior Eurovision to the adult competition, and I think that's a very realistic possibility in a few years. Next is Lucian 86. You're represented by 3 countries, Romania, Italy and the UK. Romania has Bucharest and Cluj. The city you were born in doesn't have the infrastructure. Regarding Italy, you were based in Turin and also managed to watch it in Turin last year. Fantastic. Amazing, I'm sure. And in the UK, you're based in London, so you'd prefer the O2 Arena, which I've been to. It is big. It would be fantastic for Eurovision. Sweden's not your favourite overall, but it would be a deserved win. You don't like the 3-minute rule, but because sometimes it can make songs feel rushed and artificially created. You follow a few content creators. They're all very different, which is great. You like the fandom. A lot of them are from the LGBTQ+ community, which is great. I've noticed they dislike more rappy, rocky, experimental songs, and you're a bit bothered by that, to be honest. Fair enough. But with Eurovision, you expect a lot of diversity and variety. And you're not going to like everything, as long as you're respectful towards the songs that you're not so keen on. You would change the rules so it is pure live vocals. I agree. You prefer national finals, but you need a budget and public interest for that. If you don't have them, go internal. Romania should go internal, for instance. There we go. The UK might have a budget for a national final, but it needs popular interest. Yes, it does. To be fair, the amount of trash on television, there's a space for a national final. Let me tell you that. Here in the UK. Thank you for your answers. I don't know where the other ones are. They must have just magically disappeared. I didn't delete them. Next is Lyle's Tower, or Lyle's Tower. You're from Sweden. You would have it in Stockholm at the Friends Arena with a capacity of up to 50,000 people. And because of the extremely high demand of tickets, that seems good to me. Absolutely. It's where the Melfest final is staged. I know there's the Tele2 Arena next to the Avicii Arena as well, or the Globen. Both are fantastic. Could be there next year. If Sweden, your country, won, you'd be very happy. But that could change depending on the performance in the semi-final. The worst part of the contest, toxic ESC fans. You mentioned that all of the ESC YouTube reactors you've seen are great, dedicated, knowledgeable, kind, with a wide range of interesting personalities. This, of course, goes for me. I thank you. Most fans seem to be very nice and happy, but a small group of people are toxic. You prefer national selections. Your biggest grower is Azerbaijan. Your biggest faller is Sweden because you've been listening to it too much. Cult classic, Waterloo from 1974. You'd attend Sanremo in Italy. The use of terms underrated and overrated is overrated. Your first memory of Eurovision is watching Rock Me by Riva in 1989. You remember that the singer wore a hat, and the young you thought that the melody was catchy. Ah yeah, it's fun stuff. Maybe not the best winner, but a fun song. Fantastic. Yugoslavia, 89. The attitude in Sweden towards Eurovision is rather neutral, and has been for a long while. Most people don't engage in it at all. Really? Because Sweden love Eurovision, as far as I'm aware. Millions of viewers for Melfest, every single show of it. And they've won. Sweden's won a whole bunch of times over the past, 15, 20 years. Hosted in Stockholm, hosted in Malmö, hosted in Gothenburg in the past. Could be in Sweden again next year. I'm surprised. I thought the attitude would be very positive indeed. But it is what it is. Your soft spot is for San Marino. That such a small country is really going for it year after year is impressive. When do you ever read international news about San Marino? Possibly only when it's Eurovision. Or indeed, the national football team gets absolutely battered by a country like Germany, for example. And you never watch Junior Eurovision, which is fair enough. Thank you for your answers. Next up, Choice DK. You are Danish, and you would like it to be in Herning because of its location. And the Danish national selection has been there before. It's close to an airport and very easy to get to. Otherwise, Copenhagen. How would you feel if Sweden won? You wouldn't feel disappointed because you love Sweden and the country is next door to you, but you don't want a predictable victory. But you don't think you're going to vote for it. Fair enough. I don't think I'll be voting for it either. The worst part of Eurovision, you don't particularly hate anything, but some of the fans are over-dramatic, fans accusing songs of plagiarism, and the way some fans talk about the singers. Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be respectful as best you can. Thoughts about content creators. They're doing a good job. They just need more views. And I wish it was more popular than it is right now. It is what it is. What do you think about the fandom? You can say the same thing. Some fans are definitely toxic and don't respect other people's favourites. Yeah. What would you change about the contest? There needs to be something changed and let other countries participate. Kazakhstan, for example. They're already in the junior version, and 15% of Kazakhstan is located in Europe, so why not allow them? I don't really know why the EBU hasn't allowed them to take part in the adult competition yet. I really don't know about that one. But again, it is what it is. You prefer national selections because you enjoy watching them, but your favourites also come mostly from national selections. Your biggest grower is Spain. You've gone off Ukraine's entry. I was never really on board with that one anyway, to be honest. The cult classic, Under Stjärnorna på himlen by Tommy Seaback. He's a big star. Passed away years ago, I believe. His song has been remade by his son, Rasmus Seaback. Would he ever do Eurovision? That cover gained a lot of popularity, and it's still played to this date, despite it coming 22nd in the contest. Yeah, it's a very playful song. The camera panning around them, bit of whistling. Yeah, not bad at all. And he did Eurovision a whole bunch of times. You would probably go to your own country's national selection, or Norway or Sweden, because the language is easy to understand. First Eurovision memory, 2011, but your first real memory was Lordi or Alexander Rybak, seeing those performances. Fair enough. The attitude towards Eurovision in Denmark is not great. That's a shame. And I think it will, I have to say, be even worse if Denmark don't qualify again this year. Is there a country you have a soft spot for? Malta and Estonia. Fantastic. Estonia for me as well. Is Junior MGP Nordic counted here, in terms of a former Junior Eurovision participant you want to see take part in Eurovision? You've mentioned Raz, who were in MGP Nordic. If that's not counted, it's fine with me. You can mention whoever you like. You've said Malena or Destiny again. Fair enough. Fair enough. Very interesting opinions here, particularly in terms of the attitude towards Eurovision in your country. Next up is Raulil, and you're Finnish, and you've said it should be in Tampere, and the Nokia Arena specifically. It's a new arena. It's the biggest one in all of Finland. It's 100 kilometres away from your hometown. Helsinki's at least 250 kilometres away. Don't know how realistic this option would be, but would still be great. You never know. It could be in contention next year. Sweden winning would be anticlimactic to you, And maybe it's just because Finland seems to be the runner-up favourite, so of course you would prefer us winning. I would prefer Finland winning, but it is what it is. The worst thing about Eurovision for you is the fandom. You love ESC reactors though, some you love more than others, but I sure do watch a lot of reactions. Some of them are a little loud sometimes. Not literally, but with their opinions. Fair enough. There's a couple of things you change about Eurovision, but using live instruments. Yes, indeed. Have instruments ever been live, apart from the orchestra? Way back in the day, I'm not sure. You prefer national finals for the sake of getting more music. National final winners are often weaker, though. Fair enough. You're appreciating the Belgian entry more, but you're going off Moldova, even though you like that entry very much. Cult classic, you've mentioned so many of them. Lordi is probably the only one, but domestically there are many classics. If you don't count UMK, you would like to go to Benidorm Fest because the atmosphere feels amazing and the song quality is high. Overrated, underrated, you kind of said my thoughts exactly. I think that people should just like what they like without pointing out the fact that the songs are popular and unpopular with the masses. Your first memory of Eurovision 2013, seeing Aliona Moon from Moldova in her light-up dress. The 9-year-old you was blown away by that visual. 10 years ago then, indeed. The attitude towards Eurovision in Finland. Words can't describe how much the attitude towards ESC has changed, for the better of course. Before 2021 Eurovision was seen as a joke, everybody still watched it but no one was brave enough to admit it. Now Eurovision has started to pick up steam and related topics have become trendy. Fantastic. Your soft spot, Latvia. Just because of their long NQ streak, you've started to root for them. That's fair enough. Who knows, Southern Lights could qualify in May. You don't just want, you need Mila Moshkov to return for North Macedonia. Her stage presence is out of this world and the vocal is really impressive. As an honourable mention, I'll add Danelia Tuleshova for Kazakhstan if they debut, just because it would be kind of funny to have an artist who is their country's first representative in both versions of Eurovision. Mila Moshkov would be absolutely fantastic. She would be great. And Danelia Tuleshova would be great for Kazakhstan as well. She's a great singer. Thank you for your answers. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, how long is this video? Very long, but we're getting through it. Next up is Witold. You would have it in Krakow, your beloved hometown. You have a proper arena for the event, but the folks there would not be crazy about it because you don't like crowds in the city. Fair enough. Lorient deserves to win. You'd have no problem with that. In the following years, you'd prefer more surprises, potential winners, and dark horses. You don't like countries that vote for each other. Applies for both the jurors and televoters. You appreciate my work very much and other content creators. It bothers you that some fans have a schematic approach to music. They're biased towards certain genres. Isn't the point of Eurovision to promote diversity? Indeed. You would replace the word change with innovation. You would have subtitles during the performances with translations of songs that are not in English. Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, some countries have sign language as well. And I think more of that would be really, really wonderful and very inclusive. As long as everything is done transparently and professionally, it doesn't matter to you whether it's a national final or internal selection. Your biggest growers are Spain and Greece. Cult Classic, 1994, that was Poland's debut. And also 2003, Keine Grenzen by Ik Troje. What a fantastic song that is, where the lead singer with the colourful hair ran out onto the secondary stage and ran back. And it's a very romantic sounding tune, very fairy tale, very good though. National final, Pesma za Eurovision, because you love Serbia and any region is good to spend a few days in Belgrade. Fair enough. Overrated, underrated, you get sad when other people don't like a song I like, but I don't put too much weight on those terms. Your best, or rather first Eurovision memory, 1991. You watched it with your mother. Most of your Polish friends despise Eurovision. Fair enough. What's the attitude like towards junior Eurovision in Poland? Is that positive, or is it also very mixed? Soft spot for Portugal. You love even their weaker entries, but you'd love Sarah James. This is the final question. You'd love Sarah James to go to Eurovision someday. Certainly very possible. Next up is Claude Pino. Again, apologies for the mispronunciation. You're from Canada, and if Eurovision somehow made it to Canada, you would say Toronto because it has so much to offer. Who knows, if there's a World Vision someday, it could well be there. The novelty of a two-time winner would still be there, but it honestly depends on how close the race is. If it's close, then I think I'll be more excited. But if it gets to the point where Lorraine is sweeping, then I think you'll be more disappointed. Fair enough. You don't like the hosting, specifically jokes made by the hosts. ESC is presented in English and French, but the banter and jokes are 99% made for English-speaking audiences. That's very true. You enjoy people making videos about Eurovision because that's part of how you became part of the fandom. I think that there's people for everybody, so even though you don't watch every reactor, that would be impossible to do anyway, I can appreciate that there are people who do. Some can be over the top and overly negative to get some views. The fandom can be toxic, no doubts about that. I think with ESC there's another layer where people are also defensive of their country, and some have a hard time separating a criticism of their entry and their country. But there's also the opposite, where some people are hateful towards cultures for a 3-minute song they don't like. Also, the fandom has some high horse problems. I'm mostly a Twitter fan, and on the fandom, and there the fandom has essentially delegated the role of villain to a certain group, who in all fairness are kind of bullies, and they believe themselves better. Indeed, the fandom is a pressure pot. You would change it so juries have more people, and there have to be regulations. For example, 40% of the jury should be women, most have at least 2 members under 30, etc. Yes, you're tired of old men solely deciding the results. You enjoy national finals because it's an extended period of fun, but it's really disappointing when the song you want to win doesn't. Then you mention Poland. It's a close toss-up, but I think national finals narrowly beat out internal for you. Biggest grower is Moldova. It's constantly stuck in your head. Your biggest faller is Malta. It's in your bottom 5 now. Your first memory of Eurovision, you took French throughout school, and Tu te reconnaîtras, which was the Luxembourg winner in the early 70s, was played a lot during class. Other than that, you'd have to say Waterloo or Volare, because your dad is from Italy. What a classic. Volare, so on and so forth. Overrated and underrated are subjective terms. You hate when people say Spain 2022 was underrated because she literally came third. Your first memory of Eurovision here, my apologies. You've meant that the previous answer was cult classic, my apologies. Your first memory of Eurovision is October 2014 on YouTube. You watched the grand final BBC commentary. Yes, indeed, I know exactly what video you're talking about as well. You were hooked with the flag parade, the postcards, and the giant hamster wheel. Fantastic. Most people in Canada don't know about Eurovision here. Is it even broadcast in Canada? I think it must be. It has in the past. So chances are if they do know about it, it's because they like it. You don't like the idea of stan countries, because I feel like sometimes people will defend a country's song simply because it's their stan country, and not because they actually like the song. You do have a soft spot for Belarus, who don't compete anymore. And then you say Junior Eurovision, you'd like any of Ireland's participants or either of Poland's winners. So that is Vicky Gabor and Roxana. And who knows, in the future they could be on that adult stage. This video is really, really lengthy, and there are many, many more answers to go. So, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to stop and film another part to this video very soon. So, the title of this video will specifically say Part 1. I have to stop now because my voice is starting to ache, and I've been talking for long enough, nearly 50 minutes. There's still more answers to go through. I will get through them in my next video that will surface within the next day or two. Thank you for all of your answers. Let me know your thoughts on the opinions of the individuals who left comments on that previous video. Do you agree, disagree? Let's be respectful. Let's get a bit of a debate going. That's fantastic. I also did receive an answer on Twitter to the questions, so I'll be looking at that soon as well. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe, thank you again, and bye for now.